This episode's made possible by Planful.
Hi, this is Rob Young. I am the CFO at National Geographic Society, and you are now listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 946.
We have over 100 operating units across the U.S. So by empowering and enabling those operations people, they then became very proficient in looking at ways they could add value to the client. So it's the classic, if you have escalating costs, there's a tendency to pass price to your client. Clients are feeling the same pressure that we all are. And so it's creating some efficiencies by having the visibility of what some of the cost drivers are. So we have NetSuite, and that was part of the big help as Medspeed continued to grow. I could shift my focus on profitable growth, getting some of these really big healthcare systems up and running, and starting up in a new location is a lot of attention to detail. And that helped us continue to support that growth engine.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Natalie Laackman, CFO of Medspeed. For corporate finance executives, few professional experiences are as adeptly converted into social currencies as those manifested inside the realm of mergers and acquisitions. It seems no matter whether a finance executive has been involved in one deal or 40, they're able to quickly share a takeaway or two. For a finance leader, Natalie Laackman, it's the latter, or rather the latter times two. She estimates the number of M&A deals she became involved with during the course of her career at somewhere between 75 to 100. So it perhaps goes without saying that when we had the opportunity to sit down with Laackman at this month's Sweet World in Las Vegas, we couldn't resist asking her for just one enduring snapshot from the world of M&A. CFO Natalie Laackman does not disappoint. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this.
Hi, I'm Rowan Tonkin, Chief Marketing Officer at Planful, and we're a proud sponsor of CFO Thought Leader. At Planful, we're empowering teams just like yours to drive peak financial performance in every corner of your business. What sets Planful apart? We have purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. This means we can get you up and running within weeks, and it requires minimal IT involvement. So you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business in your key financial processes. Best of all, you can't outgrow us. We take the pain of growing away with an unmatched ability to scale with you. You have an endless runway with Planful. See why over 1,300 customers around the world choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com and see how you can make financial performance a team sport in your business.
So I begin by simply saying, hello, we're speaking to Natalie Laackman, CFO of Medspeed. Natalie, welcome.
Hi, glad to be here.
Well, Natalie, we always begin by asking our guests to look back for us. And what we'd like you to do is try to identify some of those experiences you feel really prepared you to become a CFO. What would come to mind for you?
Wow, there are so many different experiences, and I'll try to keep it to some that might be relevant for others. Is early on is to get as much broad finance experience as one can get. And that would include not just general accounting and financial planning, but get into the operations, learn the business, really start to have skills that can not just report the numbers, but actually tell the story and have the ability to identify ideas for change and have an impact on the business. And I can only encourage people to take those assignments that may not be as interesting. They get you out of your comfort zone, but those are typically breakthrough. Another big change that helped me was global roles, and I could probably cover that a little more later on, but it's looking at other geographies, understanding all the drivers in different parts of the world, how business is done, the taxing and financial implications, labor, everything about it just opens your mind to learn more in those markets. And then finally, some advice I got early on, and I just feel like it's important to share. Your reputation is your brand. Always think about that. You're going to get a lot of pressure to think about doing things in a different way. Always choose the true north. Do the right thing. No regrets. Your brand, people then recognize you as high integrity, high quality, and someone that can be relied on. And that will have a lasting impact long term for an individual.
Natalie, we would love for you to take us back to your start. And I know there was a public accounting chapter at the very beginning, but even before, take us back, would you?
Sure. The classic accounting degree, passed the CPA exam, and so I joined Deloitte in Chicago, and I had assignment on some big SEC clients. One of them was Sears Roebuck. Back in the day, early retail, but I learned a lot about real estate management. At the time, they had owned Allstate, Coldwell Banker Real Estate, big international growth. And that gave me the ability to learn different industries as well as SEC reporting and all the confidentiality that goes around quarterly earnings release. So I did mix it up, though, with some other smaller clients, so I got the flavor of different industries. And I like the big companies, and being in the Chicago area, I had some food clients, and that's actually what took me to a big food company called Kraft.
And was that your first step into industry then?
Yes.
And what are you joining them as, a finance manager or?
Sure. So I go into financial reporting, and certainly I've put together financial reports for clients. And the interesting part, though, is you know how to build financial statements, but you don't necessarily have the skills to know how to analyze. And that was something very early on I picked up, that if I can tell the story, if I can bring out some key trends and make recommendations, that's where I can continue to build beyond just being a scorekeeper in finance. And that was a good time for me because it felt like every 6 to 12 months, there was another assignment to get rotated to. So you performed in role and you'd feel like you just got the job figured out. And then they'd tap you on the shoulder and say, well, we got another interesting assignment.
Now, are you headed into FP&A? Was there a particular assignment that brought you into that world in a meaningful way, whereas you were thought of as an accountant for a while, or not really?
Well, financial reporting is sort of that hybrid between the accountants and the FP&A. And by learning how the reporting gets built, you learn the business. And then there's this comfort level of how to then project out and build out forecasts and budgets. And that's where I then migrated into the FP&A role.
Was there someone helping point the direction for you? Were there mentors along the way, or what do you recall exactly?
Absolutely. So one mentor was the business group CFO. The other was someone who was just maybe 2 levels above me. He might have been a director or a senior director. And he, for some reason, had this ability to see talent and take the time to help develop it. Because we all know how much time and energy it takes to develop people. But it would be just that kind of coaching feedback. Sometimes all it is just giving you a pat on the back because you worked so hard. And that certainly helped.
How long were you at Kraft for?
So I was at Kraft for 6 years.
Oh, another 6-year investment. And do you leave to go to Kellogg's yet? Or
No,
okay.
no.
Another chapter.
Yeah, the food companies very big in the Chicago area. I've been acquired 7 times. So for those who have had to experience in a business unit that gets spun off to someone else, in that case, my last role at Kraft was overseeing finance operations, logistics, and big systems integration. We were getting spun off to another big food company, and then I got recruited to go to a company called Sara Lee. I don't know if it doesn't exist anymore because it ended up being spun off, but the appeal was it was the corporate office. And I had this goal to do corporate finance, and I actually wanted to do corporate M&A. That was a big goal of mine. And after about the 5th acquisition, they were global. I had the feeling that if I didn't do another acquisition again, that would be fine. Because the excitement is when you're doing business acquisitions, is you're trying to find the connection in your existing company. What could the synergies be? What's the potential of the total market to put companies together? And it's very complex, especially when they're global. But they can take you to places where you're just intellectually challenged beyond just the numbers in finance. Because you're building out a business plan, you're selling the big idea through the rest of the company to get on board.
Natalie, we have some other M&A related questions we'd like to ask you. And while you said sounds like you had your fill of it, the fact is that you go on and it's such an essential part of sort of your CFO upbringing that we must touch on it again with you. But first, you talked about Kraft. You talked about Sara Lee entering the corporate office at Sara Lee, how that was important. There's another company that pops out on your resume, another brand company, Kellogg, where you make an investment of 6 years, and it's there where you really ascend into the upper ranks of finance leadership. Can you share some thoughts on that chapter with us? And then we'll come back and ask you about M&A some more.
I came into Kellogg in a business group capacity, big group, over $2 billion in revenue. And the idea was to come in as a finance leader and help drive growth. So the business had stalled out, and I could leverage some of the success I had in prior companies is how to jumpstart the top line with investing in products, innovation, R&D, and then it was integrating acquisitions. And then because I have a strong IT background, it was being the CFO for global IT as well as the business unit. Yeah, and the interesting part, Kellogg's corporate headquarters were Battle Creek, Michigan. I was in a big business group that wasn't at corporate, so I was about a 4-hour drive away. So I invested the time to go to the corporate office at least 2 weeks a month, and to go there, build the relationships with my peers and other parts of the organization. And then what was really transformative, actually, the president of that business group took a different role, and I actually stepped in and ran that business for a year. So it's that building the credibility that people have confidence that you know the business, you're a strong finance person, but you can also provide the leadership over the business.
We mentioned we wanted to come back to M&A with you, and it was such a defining part of your career, whether it was the integration, the deal making, what have you. Uh, what about the food industry and M&A? Is there something distinctive about how the food industry pursues deals or integrates them? Or why did it become such an important chapter for you is what I'm curious about.
M&A has several facets to it. One is building out a business idea, a business plan, where you're forward looking at what the potential is if you could couple of these businesses together. Then finance people get involved in the due diligence. And that is where that can add tremendous value, either doing due diligence on the tax side, on the financial books, the balance sheet, looking at the company's business practices and internal controls. That ends up becoming some of the key success that finance people can bring to the closing part of an acquisition. Because finance can also be very creative in looking at what assets get valued. There could be some really good intellectual property that could get valued. You could become very clever on the tax side of it. And that is really an intellectual stimulation for a lot of finance people. It's like taking a puzzle and trying to find kind of what's the magic in this transaction that we can bring that will bring value to the shareholders and the investors of the company.
Natalie, if we would love to just turn our lens on you, just on behalf of our listeners, because your personal experiences in M&A, I think, would be fascinating for us. And we're wondering, because really, M&A becomes your brand. Would you agree?
It absolutely. And here would be an interesting story I could just sort of connect to the team. I was at a big company, and the desire was to grow internationally. And I was asked to go to a third world country. So actually fly out to Sao Paulo, Brazil by yourself. There'll be armed guards meeting you there at the airport. And we need you to go meet with these independent individuals. There were two brothers that built this really interesting business. And we want you to go negotiate with them. One of them speaks English. And we want you to start the deal and get this deal moving along. So there I did. I flew out there. I got all the coaching of what to do and not do from a safety standpoint, and had to just have the confidence to walk there. Never met these people before. Got invited to their home for dinner. Lived how life is very different when you're eating dinner at 11 o'clock at night. And you just have to adapt, and you have to make it work with all your technical skills are a given. It's also your influencing skills, quick on your feet to assess a situation and be able to make influence and ultimately try to accomplish your goal, but to be sure you're aware of all aspects so there's no surprises.
Natalie, can I ask, when was that? Was that 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
That was 2001. So that was
just amazing, the notion that you're invited over to the house and you're going to be the catalyst to make sure this deal happens, and you're getting a read on them whether they're interested.
Here's the part that this perception of what's happening in the moment. This was their baby. They built this company. They wanted to be sure that they were going to sell this company to another organization that was going to continue to grow it, nurture it, and love it just like they did. So here's the part that I had to be aware of. It wasn't important just on the number they got. They wanted to be sure it was the right cultural fit. So when I went to that founder's home for dinner, it was with his wife, his daughter who was in her 20s, and his father-in-law who was celebrating his 80th birthday at the dinner, and some other family members. And so what I realized is I needed to demonstrate that I was a person that represented someone who would be a terrific cultural fit for their company to be sold to, that it wasn't just a business transaction. And that meant being very alert and very supportive and trying to engage with that family.
How long were you there for then? And when did, I imagine the deal happened, and How long did it take? Was it 12 months later and it was behind you or no?
No, I think that first trip was a week. There were a few other trips down there, but that deal got done in 3 months. And that's knowing it's more than just the financial part. It's that overall whole holistic approach to the human side as well as the technical side.
Wow, just a wonderful snapshot for us, Natalie. Thank you so much. We will have some additional career related questions for you, but right now, tell us about Medspeed. What does it do? What are its offerings today?
Sure. We are the leading provider of same-day logistics to the healthcare industry. And the company has transformed the approach to delivering supplies, pharmaceuticals, lab specimens throughout the healthcare industry. And the big vision is to enable better healthcare through reimagining the logistics and focusing on high quality and more effectively utilize our size and scale to the benefit of service providers and better patient care.
Now, you joined them in January of 21.
Yes.
And as you come aboard, what is the chapter that you're hoping to influence here? What is the chapter you're helping open at Medspeed?
Well, my background has been come into a business similar to what I mentioned on Kellogg. It's a good business, but it's not reaching its financial potential. And in this case, I was the first CFO. So come in and...
Had you ever been in the first CFO before, or in such an organization? No.
So this was accounting team was in place, but having someone in the C-suite that was the head of finance, and by the way, it was also I'm the chief supply chain officer, the chief digital officer, so they sort of add a few things, but it was coming in, and we're in COVID. So the company is been a high growth, so double-digit growth year after year. And as the company gets bigger, there's a breaking point. You can't continue to throw more people. So I come in to look at how can we be more efficient. And it's the classic using NetSuite, drilling into the financials and finding, I like to call it, fresh eyes can find money all over the floor that other people didn't see, and they're walking right over it. And it's looking at what the company already had visibility to, but missed it. Yeah. And I was able to find, I'll call them easy, painless expense reductions. So it wasn't through headcount reductions and restructuring. It was just fixing broken process across operations and other functions.
Were they easy to find? Did you quickly, coming in, understand what needed to be fixed first?
I'm smiling here because some of us are really good at remembering numbers. Like we almost have a photographic memory. And it's getting familiar with what are the core drivers of the business. And so I'll give you a simple example. I knew when I joined the organization it had about 1,200 vehicles. And then I looked and I was looking at the costs of the vehicles, and it looked like we were paying for much more than that. So right away, your antenna goes up and says, all right, that doesn't look right. And you just probe, ask the next question, and suddenly we found out, yep, we were being overcharged for a significant number. So that was just a miss along the way. What it also identified for me is create some role clarity and accountability. So who's responsible for what part of an end-to-end process? And that was part of the findings of just being more efficient and effective with the resources we had.
And you mentioned NetSuite, of course, but was part of your approach just making numbers more visible more frequently, or making certain each of the top managers were looking at the same numbers? What was the sort of the state of how information was being shared or emphasized?
Sure. We so we have NetSuite, and what I identified is we have over 100 operating units across the U.S. So having our general managers in each one of those locations own their own P&L, have access to not only their P&L, but the drill down ability, so they could research cost drivers or they could research questions they had on the revenue line. And what it did is it enabled them to do some of their own analysis, which freed my team up from having to field every single question from every market. We couldn't have enough finance people. So by empowering and enabling those operations people, they then became very proficient in looking at ways they could add value to the client. So it's the classic, if you have escalating costs, there's a tendency to pass price to your client. Clients are feeling the same pressure that we all are. And so it's creating some efficiencies by having the visibility of what some of the cost drivers are. And that was part of the big help as Medspeed continued to grow. I could shift my focus on profitable growth, getting some of these really big healthcare systems up and running, and starting up in a new location is a lot of attention to detail. And that helped us continue to support that growth engine.
You mentioned that your finance people weren't, the operations people weren't, as dependent on the finance people any longer. What about the finance team? Did you think about using them a little differently? Did you reorganize them in some way?
Yeah, what the finance team likes to have is the ability to do more strategic analysis, more insights and analysis. And so for them, it shifted their work from being researching a transaction in the ledger to actually doing some really, I'll call them visualization type analytics to identify, again, think of 100 operating companies. Try to find out, like, what are those exceptions? What are the items that are standing out that we want to either recognize the positive, that businesses that are performing really well, and help us take that and replicate it and educate, because it may or may not work in another market. But creating that really good reporting, analysis, exception reporting, and then my team's able to engage with the senior operations leaders on the findings. So it certainly allows them to have a much more interesting role and feel like they're making a lasting impact on business decisions.
I ask this question sometimes. I might spring it on you as well, I guess. We're wondering if your FP&A team members were down the hall and you swung open the door. What are they thinking Natalie's going to ask us for?
When we're looking at what the current business environment is, the economic situation, what I'm going to certainly want to understand is the impact of these inflationary impacts across the board. So it's not just labor costs, it's through all of our logistics areas. And then understand, what are we going to do about it? So how do we solve to the bottom line to offset any cost increase, try to develop, is there organic growth, is there pricing? But many times it's finding efficiencies. So working smarter, using our resources in better ways, and that's what they know I'll be looking for them to be able to identify.
Can you share a little bit about what you're thinking when about AI, the mindset that you're adopting about it? Is it something that's going to really change, you think, the business, or is it something in a limited fashion?
Oh, absolutely. Because we look at our business as time and miles. And an example, we're still early stage, like many companies, is we started building the foundation almost 3 years ago of a strong analytics department. So building a big data lake, getting that foundation of the right data, because taking that journey for AI, we need to make sure we have the right scenarios of base business. And we have early stage explored how could we do more efficient routing. You could do thousands of iterations like so quickly now, the speed of technology, and finding and how we could help and improve timing and service to our clients, how we also value our messaging around sustainability. The less miles we drive, the more sustainable we are as a partner in the communities we serve. Another big idea that we started a year ago is electrification of our fleet. So some of this AI will help us in understanding battery range, trade-offs of really long routes, and could we meet some sustainability goals that our clients are very interested in. It's a very important topic for the healthcare sector.
Is the AI conversation sort of happening everywhere in the organization? I mean, is it surprising you where people are talking about it and how it might have an application?
Sure. It's different functions are looking at it and trying to understand. One part is in the human resources side. There is I'll put quotes, ethics side of AI regarding recruiting and people related. And so we're very cautious in how we approach it. On the operational side, there's just enormous amount of opportunity to learn and how to use it. And then as we look at the marketplace and try and understand what's next for the company's growth.
When you look back over your career, there were certain technology paradigms where whether it was the web and the commercialization of the web, whether it was the cloud and cloud application software and tools becoming available, and now AI. How do you look at AI similarly as you did to those other developments in time?
There's so much that companies have adopted and adapted. Think about when we had very integrated ERP systems, where before businesses could be very autonomous, and suddenly there was the ability for all parts of the company to be on the same system across an entire platform, like you say, on a cloud-based tool. And it took a lot of transformation in organizations from not just using a tool, but to get the people to embrace the change and to help them be set up for success. And I see AI as part of that learning curve. But ultimately, it'll have to settle out of, what are those really nuggets and gems of facts that we can leverage, and how much of it is like noise, and make sure that we're not misinterpreting what it might generate for us.
From episode 748, this is 1 Minute with Shauna Rowlett, CFO of Man Lake Bee and Ag Supply.
This year, one of our biggest priorities is our inventory management. With the pandemic and freight issues and port issues and it being expensive to ship things internationally or supply chain issues domestically, we're putting a really big focus on our inventory turns. What are we investing our money into? And do I have the right inventory at my right locations at the right time?
Natalie, I thought we'd move to the mentoring round where we begin by asking you to look back again. And we're wondering about the first time you took on a very senior finance leadership role. And I'll let you identify what it was. But for those first-time CFOs out there or those first-time unit CFOs, what is that piece of advice you would give yourself back then? That first 60 days, you were like, I didn't expect this, or there was something you wish someone had told you as you stepped into that leadership role. As prepared as you were, as observant as you were of other leaders, there was something.
Wow, there's so much. But one learning I had, I observed at a company. I was probably director level, and I watched how the company didn't reinvest in product development, market expansion, and for growth. And if the company was generating incremental profit, they would just drop it to the bottom line. Well, you could do a couple years fast forward and think about what happens as the markets change. And that stayed with me. So as I became a CFO, while we always have pressure to drive top line growth and to improve margins and profitability, what I recognize is not to just focus on cutting cost, to drop it to the bottom line, but to find the right balance, to report improved profitability, but also have that growth engine of reinvestment, and whether it's in technology or capacity planning or innovation, and continue to champion and support your peers who are always looking for resources and have some sort of a cross-functional engagement so that leadership team has the same kind of buy-in and supports how we prioritize those investments. And that helps a company build for the future.
Nice. Have you ever thought about how many M&A deals you were involved with over your career? Is there a number? Have you ever tried?
Putting a number on them?
Yeah, I certainly have looked, and I know it's north of 75, probably close to 100.
Majority in food or no?
More than half were in food.
When you do leave the food industry,
and distribution.
is there? Was there a time you thought you'd be in food the rest of your career, or it wasn't really like that? It was just the opportunity ultimately that.
It's sort of we get these like epiphanies, like something clicks with. When I was looking to join Medspeed, there was another big $10 billion food company. And it had kind of the same sort of formula that I felt like, sure, I could come in, I could be successful, I kind of know the playbook on it. But what attracted me to Medspeed was the founder CEO, true visionary, and the passion that he has in building this company out, and the culture. They call every employee a Medspeeder, which is just this passion of each employee is valued every day. And I know it's a fear we have as the company gets bigger, we might lose it. But it was this appeal that I could certainly bring my skills and make a difference in the financial. But it was also being a part of something much bigger, building something that for our mission is so important. As I researched what we do for healthcare every day, how the need is ever greater, and to be critical in that service delivery. And I thought, this is really going to be interesting to do something very different, but also feel like I can have a positive impact.
Can you share with us something about yourself that most people might not know? I did put you on the spot.
You did. It's like, wow. There's certainly a part of so many of us. We're very focused, high achievers. We're always striving for that next element of success that we don't tend to relish. We're always on to the next big challenge. But I got some terrific advice early in my career. My first CFO job, someone told me, the career is going to be there, you'll do well, take care of yourself. And the advice was, make a new friend every year. And it was really hard being a professional woman, traveling the world every week. It was hard. And
to meet that benchmark of one new friend.
One new friend.
The investment takes time.
Yeah. Because you make a friend and then they get relocated. So it's constantly building that out. And so over time, I've made that a high priority. And it's been exciting now to have, a great group of professional women, professional friends. And we're very active. So I do a women's league platform tennis. It's winter tennis. And they're all professional women. They're all doctors, lawyers, C-suite. Nobody talks about work. It's Monday nights, and it's just a great way to socialize and have a sport. And that has been important to make that focus, on your own person besides the professional side.
Yeah, outstanding. Thank you for that. We always like to end by, and I don't know, is there a book that's influenced your thinking over time? Is there anything you'd point to? If not, I don't have to ask the question, but we'd be interested in learning if there's something that sits on your shelf today.
The one that was long and it took a while to get through was Titan. And I don't know if those who know, it was about J.D. Rockefeller.
Oh, yeah.
And that was very intense in what his childhood was like, what he went through to build, his huge empire.
Upstate to New York to Cleveland.
Absolutely. And, there was some quirkiness about him as well. And it helped me just see an individual who overcame such difficult upbringing. And he built this empire. He also knew loopholes and why there's a lot of laws that got put in place because he exploited them.
Yeah.
But to learn fascinating about a powerful individual, and then ended up most of that wealth was given away. In fact, I sit on the board of Brookfield Zoo. It's a zoo in Chicago, big one. Edith Rockefeller, his daughter, contributed a big part of her wealth and all the land for that zoo. So it's sort of fascinating to watch the legacy of an individual like that.
Yeah, great figure. We haven't had the book recommended before, so thank you. We love getting a first selection. We are up to our final question, which is to ask you to look forward, finally. And we're wondering what your priorities are as a CFO for the coming 12 months. What would those be?
Well, part of what we're going to learn about here at NetSuite is some of their new products. Account reconciliation is one of them. The other one is an automated bill pay tool. And this is leveraging technology, hopefully to move my organization from some things that are still a bit of a manual, tedious task and get those automated. And looking at some of the reporting tools and visualization is so critical right now. Is now that we have good financial reporting and we have good data and it's clean and reliable and we can forecast, is now making the story sizzle and coming with some really good insights to take us forward.
Natalie Laackman, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you.
Hello, Thought Leader listeners. As you have perhaps already heard or even seen, we're now featuring the career lessons and moments of strategic insight shared by our CFO guests as Thought Leader videos. You can now find these videos on our blog at cfothoughtleader.com and, of course, our newsletters, but also on LinkedIn. If you haven't already, please go ahead and follow our CFO Thought Leader LinkedIn company page, and you'll be certain not to miss a single Thought Leader video debut. CFO Thought Leader, the #1 thought leadership platform exclusively for and by CFOs. As always, thank you for listening.